Listen closely, for I have a tale that will grip your heart and quicken your pulse. A story of a man who dared to cross the line between right and wrong, not for selfish gain, but for a cause that burned with desperate necessity. This is the saga of a man named Calvin Mercer, a quiet soul with a turbulent past, whose life had always been a series of fateful crossroads and whispered secrets. On one balmy, restless night, under a sky smeared with the bruised hues of twilight, Calvin found himself at the edge of an abyss, a moment where the ordinary rules of society blurred into shades of gray, and his very soul beckoned him toward an impossible act: the theft of an ambulance. It all began when Calvin, an unassuming mechanic with nimble fingers and a heart that harbored both scars and hope, discovered a secret that threatened to shatter the fragile peace of his small town. Late one humid evening, while closing the shop where he had spent countless hours mending engines and patching broken dreams, he received a cryptic phone call, a voice, barely more than a whisper, pleading for help. The voice belonged to a friend from his past, a man entangled in the web of corruption and injustice that had long festered in the underbelly of the city. This friend, Michael, was caught in a vice of bureaucratic indifference and criminal machinations, and his life, along with the lives of innocent bystanders, hung precariously in the balance. Calvin's mind raced with questions and a mounting sense of dread. Michael's voice, quivering with fear, revealed that a powerful cabal, hidden behind the facade of respectability, had been siphoning funds meant for critical medical services. The stolen money, meant to buy life-saving equipment for the local hospital, had been diverted into the pockets of corrupt officials, leaving the community exposed and vulnerable. Worse still, Michael hinted that there were victims, ailing patients who had been denied timely care, their lives callously bartered away in the name of profit. The injustice ignited a fire within Calvin that he had never known before, a burning desire to set things right, no matter the personal cost. In the dead silence of that fateful night, as rain began to patter softly against the tin roof of his modest apartment, Calvin made a decision that would alter the course of his life. The plan was audacious and, by all conventional measures, criminal: to steal an ambulance. Not for monetary gain, not for reckless adventure, but to use it as a mobile base of operations, a chariot of justice that would transport him into the very heart of the corruption that plagued his community. With the stolen funds and resources he could commandeer in the ambulance, Calvin intended to expose the syndicate behind the scam, to rescue the innocent, and to deliver evidence that would shake the foundations of a corrupt system. The next day, as the sun rose over a sleepy town, still rubbing the remnants of night from its eyes, Calvin set his plan into motion. He recalled an old, rusted ambulance parked at the edge of town, a relic of past emergencies and forgotten promises. With a blend of trepidation and steely resolve, he approached the vehicle, its once bright colors dulled by time and neglect. The keys, he knew, were in the possession of the ambulance's custodian, a man who trusted him implicitly after years of service and shared hardship. Without hesitation, Calvin enacted his carefully honed plan. Under the cover of darkness, he discreetly acquired the keys, his heart pounding in his chest like the distant beat of war drums. In that moment, he was no longer a humble mechanic. He was a crusader poised on the precipice of fate, ready to challenge an injustice that had long gone unchecked. As Calvin slid into the driver's seat of the ambulance, the gravity of his decision pressed upon him like an anchor. The engine roared to life with a force that mirrored his own resolve. With every twist of the key and every surge of power, the vehicle transformed into a vessel of retribution, a beacon in a world shrouded in deceit. His mission was clear: infiltrate the labyrinthine network of corruption, gather the damning evidence, and return justice to a community that had been robbed of its hope. The journey that followed was a tapestry of danger, intrigue, and unexpected alliances. Calvin's route led him through narrow backstreets and desolate industrial zones, where the neon glow of forgotten dreams mingled with the harsh reality of poverty and neglect. Every turn, every intersection was fraught with peril, as the cabal's reach extended into every shadowed corner of the city. With the ambulance as his shield, he navigated through a maze of surveillance and informants, relying on his instincts and a carefully forged network of contacts. An underground collective of whistleblowers, ex-employees, and ordinary citizens who had long suffered in silence. In one such encounter, Calvin met a woman named Elena, a former nurse whose eyes held the sorrow of 1,000 untold stories. Elena had witnessed firsthand the heart-wrenching consequences of the corruption that siphoned away the lifeblood of the community. With a voice both gentle and resolute, she recounted the stories of patients left to languish in overcrowded wards, of families torn apart by grief and indignation. Her testimony, laden with raw emotion, became the catalyst for a deeper resolve within Calvin. Together, they forged an unlikely alliance, pooling their courage and resources to unravel the mystery that lay at the core of the scandal. The investigation unfolded like a carefully choreographed dance. A series of clandestine meetings in abandoned warehouses, high-speed chases through rain-soaked streets, and tense confrontations in dimly lit corridors. Calvin, behind the wheel of the stolen ambulance, became a phantom in the night, a ghost whose presence was felt but never seen by those who sought to maintain the status quo. With each passing hour, he uncovered layers of deceit that extended far beyond the misappropriation of funds. There were whispers of political collusion, secret meetings in luxurious boardrooms, and an intricate web of alliances between law enforcement and criminal enterprises. One rainy night, as the city trembled under the weight of its secrets, Calvin found himself parked near an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the industrial district. The building, shrouded in mystery and neglect, held within its walls a trove of incriminating documents, audio recordings, and photographs that linked the cabal to high-ranking officials. In that moment of perilous discovery, the tension in the air was palpable. Every sound, the distant rumble of thunder, the scuttle of rodents in the dark corners, seemed to whisper of betrayal and imminent danger. Calvin's fingers trembled as he rifled through the contents of a dusty file cabinet, each document a damning piece of the puzzle. His heart pounded as he connected the dots, realizing that the conspiracy was far more vast and insidious than he had ever imagined. Yet, even as he meticulously compiled the evidence, Calvin knew that his time was running short. The forces arrayed against him were not idle. They were aware that someone was digging into their affairs. Shadows began to move with purpose, and the distant hum of pursuit grew louder with every passing minute. In a race against time, Calvin's mind whirled with strategies and contingencies. The ambulance, now more than a mere vehicle, became his lifeline, a fortress on wheels that shielded him from the ever-encroaching threat. With the evidence secured in hidden compartments and encrypted files, he embarked on a desperate escape through a labyrinth of narrow alleyways and deserted highways. In one heart-stopping moment, as he hurtled down an empty road shrouded in the mist of early dawn, the wail of sirens sliced through the stillness. The cabal's enforcers, relentless in their pursuit, had caught up with him. The chase became a high-octane ballet of lights and shadows, a relentless pursuit that transformed the quiet countryside into a battleground of wills. Calvin's hands gripped the steering wheel as he swerved through obstacles, his eyes locked on the horizon where freedom beckoned like a distant promise. The tension was almost unbearable, a living testament to the courage of a man who had sacrificed everything for justice. During the chase, memories of a simpler time surfaced. Days when he had been content with the quiet rhythms of life, working diligently in the garage, caring for his aging mother, and dreaming of a future unburdened by secrets. Those days now seemed like a distant mirage, replaced by a reality that was as harsh as it was unforgiving. Every twist and turn in the road was a reminder that his actions, though driven by noble intent, had set in motion a chain of events that could not be undone. Yet, in the midst of chaos, the thought of Michael, the friend whose life depended on the truth, propelled him forward. The stolen ambulance was no longer just a tool of rebellion. It was a symbol of hope for those who had been abandoned by a system that prioritized profit over life. As the sun began to crest the horizon, casting long shadows over the dew-laden landscape, Calvin's mind raced with the enormity of his task. His heart pounded in tandem with the rhythmic pulsing of the sirens, each note a grim reminder of the stakes at hand. The pursuit culminated in a final, desperate stand at a long-forgotten railway crossing, where Calvin maneuvered the ambulance into a precarious standoff. With a blend of daring and cunning, he managed to create a diversion, a series of calculated moves that allowed him to slip away into the safety of a hidden tunnel. The tunnel, an abandoned relic of a bygone era, became his sanctuary for a few fleeting hours, a place where he could catch his breath and plan the next phase of his perilous mission. In that subterranean haven, the silence was both a balm and a torment. The weight of his actions pressed upon him as he reviewed every detail of the evidence, every fragment of truth he had gathered. Here, in the dim glow of a single, flickering bulb, Calvin began to piece together the full extent of the conspiracy. The documents revealed a network of corruption that spanned local government, law enforcement, and even international financial institutions. It was a web so vast and complex that even the most seasoned investigators would have faltered in its unraveling. Yet, amid the chaos and danger, Calvin felt a renewed sense of purpose, a conviction that, despite the odds, the truth would prevail if only it could be brought to light. As hours turned into days, and days into a relentless pursuit of justice, Calvin's solitary journey evolved into a larger movement. News of his daring act, the man who had stolen an ambulance for a noble cause, began to ripple through the community like an electric current. Ordinary citizens, long oppressed by the invisible hand of corruption, found solace and inspiration in his actions. From the shadows emerged a quiet network of allies, an investigative journalist hungry for the truth, a disillusioned ex-cop with insider knowledge, and even a group of local activists determined to reclaim their city from the clutches of greed. Together, though scattered and uncoordinated at first, they began to form a clandestine collective, each member a vital thread in the tapestry of resistance. In a series of clandestine meetings held in abandoned factories and hidden basements, the group exchanged information and formulated plans to dismantle the cabal piece by piece. Calvin, still on the run, became the rallying point for a burgeoning revolution. His stolen ambulance, which had once been a solitary instrument of defiance, now symbolized the collective hope of a people determined to fight back against systemic injustice. Every time the sound of sirens echoed in the distance, it served as a reminder that the forces of corruption were closing in. Yet, with every setback, the resolve of Calvin and his newfound comrades grew stronger. The tension in the air was palpable, a simmering mix of fear, anticipation, and unyielding determination. There were moments when the danger seemed insurmountable, a night when, after narrowly evading capture, Calvin hid beneath a rusted overpass, his body trembling with adrenaline and exhaustion, listening as the distant footsteps of his pursuers receded into the darkness. In that fragile silence, he allowed himself a fleeting moment of introspection, memories of his childhood, of simpler times when hope was as tangible as the morning sun, mingled with the harsh reality of the present. The stolen ambulance, with its squealing tires and battered exterior, had become both his burden and his beacon. It carried the weight of a city's desperation and the promise of redemption. As the investigation gathered momentum, a turning point came when an unexpected informant stepped forward. Known only as the Watcher, this elusive figure provided a final, critical piece of evidence, a cache of documents stored in a derelict safe house on the outskirts of the city. The documents detailed clandestine meetings, financial transactions, and coded messages that directly implicated key figures in the corruption network. The revelation was explosive, a veritable bombshell that threatened to topple the entire edifice of power built on deception and greed. Armed with this incontrovertible evidence, Calvin and his allies planned a daring public disclosure, a live broadcast that would expose the conspiracy to the world, shattering the veil of secrecy that had long concealed the truth. On the eve of the broadcast, tension reached fever pitch. The group convened in a safe house, converted into a makeshift command center, where computer screens flickered with streams of data and anxious whispers filled the room. Outside, the city lay in a state of restless anticipation, its denizens unaware that the dawn would bring a reckoning. Calvin, now more than just a fugitive, was at the center of this historic moment. His eyes, once filled with the quiet resignation of a man resigned to fate, now burned with fierce determination. Every breath he took was a silent promise to those who had suffered, every beat of his heart a rallying cry for justice. As midnight gave way to the first pale light of dawn, the live broadcast commenced. The world watched in stunned silence as the damning evidence was unveiled, a torrent of proof that dismantled the facade of legitimacy maintained by the corrupt elite. The revelations were so staggering that the very foundations of power began to crumble. In that moment, as the truth echoed across screens around the globe, Calvin felt a surge of vindication and relief. His act of desperation, the theft of an ambulance, had become a symbol of resistance, a spark that ignited a movement far greater than any single man could have envisioned. Yet, even as triumph mingled with the lingering echoes of danger, the story did not end in a neat crescendo of victory. The aftermath was a chaotic blend of retribution, uncertainty, and the bittersweet knowledge that the fight for justice was an endless struggle. The cabal, though exposed and weakened, would not vanish overnight. Their reach was deep, their resources vast, and the battle for the soul of the city was far from over. Calvin, now both celebrated and hunted, understood that the price of truth was high, a price measured in sleepless nights, shattered trust, and the constant specter of betrayal. But he had tasted the sweetness of victory, however fleeting, and that taste would drive him forward in the long, arduous journey ahead. In the months that followed, as the city began the slow process of healing and reformation, Calvin's story became legend, a modern parable of courage, sacrifice, and the indomitable human spirit. The stolen ambulance, once a mere tool of defiance, was enshrined as a symbol of hope in public memory. Its battered exterior and scars bore silent testimony to the trials of a man who had risked everything to bring light to a darkness that had long been allowed to fester. And though Calvin himself remained a shadow, a man whose identity was carefully concealed for his own safety, his actions resonated deeply with those who had long suffered under the weight of injustice. Every whispered conversation in the back alleys, every defiant protest in the city square, carried with it the echoes of his daring deed. He had shown that even in the face of overwhelming odds, a single act of bravery could inspire a revolution. His story was told in hushed tones in community centers, recounted in underground newsletters, and even immortalized in a mural on the side of an abandoned building. A vibrant, sprawling testament to the power of one individual to challenge a corrupt system. As the seasons changed, the city evolved. The once forgotten corners where despair had taken root began to flourish with new life, a testament to the transformative power of truth and courage. The legacy of the ambulance heist served as a constant reminder that justice, though often elusive, was worth every sacrifice. And while the battle against corruption and greed continued unabated, the spirit of resistance had been irrevocably awakened in the hearts of the people. Today, as I recount this tale to you, dear listener, know that it is not merely a story of a man who stole an ambulance for a noble cause. It is a story of hope reborn from the ashes of despair, of courage kindled in the darkest of nights, and of the enduring truth that sometimes, in the pursuit of justice, one must defy convention and risk everything. Calvin Mercer's journey is a living testament to the fact that every act of defiance, no matter how seemingly small, can ripple outwards to change the course of history. And though the shadows of that tumultuous night may still linger, they serve as a constant reminder that even in the depths of corruption, there is always a glimmer of light. a light that, once ignited, can never be extinguished. So, as you ponder the twists and turns of this extraordinary saga, a saga of a man who dared to challenge a monstrous system, of an ambulance transformed into a chariot of hope, and of a revolution born in the crucible of adversity, remember that the fight for justice is never over. It is a journey that demands sacrifice, resilience, and above all, the unwavering belief that one person's courage can set the wheels of change in motion. And in that belief lies the power to rewrite the future, to mend the broken, and to transform even the darkest of nights into a dawn of endless possibility. This, my dear listener, is the story of Calvin Mercer, a story that continues to unfold with every heartbeat, every whispered secret, and every courageous act in the name of truth. And as long as there are those willing to stand against tyranny and corruption, the legacy of that stolen ambulance, that fateful night of reckoning, will live on, a beacon of hope in a world that desperately needs to be reminded of the enduring power of the human spirit.